Greetings, welcome to W8U4 Criteria for Students' Performance, the second part. In the last unit, we understood the SCR requirements of subcriteria 4.1 and 4.2 of criteria for student performance. The outcome of this unit is the SCR requirements, understand the SCR requirements of criterion for students' performance, the remaining subcriteria, the remaining 5 subcriteria 4.3 to 4.7. As in the case of the earlier unit, here also most of the assessment and evaluation is based on the data provided by the department. There is not much that is left to the subjective perception of the visiting team. Almost all the assessments and evaluations are based on the data provided by the department, which means that the department itself can determine how many marks it is likely to get under this criterion if it has all the data properly available and maintained, backed up by adequate documentary evidence. So, it is mostly objective metric. So, 4.3, this is the academic performance of the first year students of the program. Because similarly, we will have regarding second year, third year, so on. The allocation of marks is 10 and the table which is given in the next slide shows what is the way the data is to be provided and what are the guidelines. The academic performance is taken as average of academic performance index or API over the last 3 years, current academic year -1 and -2, where the average performance index is computed as if this institute is following a grade point average, mean of the first year grade point average of all successful students on a 10-point scale. If the institute is following absolute marks, then mean percentage of the marks of all successful students in a first year divided by 10. If the institute is following an absolute marks system, then if they have average percentage as 78, then it is taken as 7.8. Of course, if it is a grade point average on a 10-point scale, straight away take the grade point average. So, the data is provided in the tabular form like this. So, mean either grade point average or percentage divided by 10. And if X is that mean and total number of successful students is Y and Z is total number of students who appeared in the examinations, then the academic performance index API is calculated as X into Y by Z, number of successful candidates by the total students who appeared. So, this ratio is used as the multiplier of X. Now, who are called as the successful students? Successful students are those who are allowed to proceed to the next year. Okay. That means, if the student is in first year and if the student has appeared for the examinations and if the student is allowed to proceed to second year, then we consider that student as a successful student. Now, who are allowed to proceed to second year depends upon the regulations of the affiliating university or the affiliating body, whichever is responsible for it. In the sense, if it is a deemed university, then its own academic bodies. So, some institutes or some universities put a bar, a gate on who are allowed to proceed to second year, like one should not have more than 4 backlog subjects. It is possible, or some institutes may not put any bar. Depending on what the regulations are, who is allowed to proceed to second year can vary. But under this criterion, if a student is allowed to proceed to the second year, we consider that student as a successful student. So, we count all those students as successful when they are allowed to proceed to the second year. This is how the ratio is calculated. For 3 years it is calculated and the average is taken, and that becomes the average performance index, and that average performance index is used as the basis for giving the marks. Okay. Now, in absolutely similar fashion, we compute the academic performance of the second year students, that is subcriterion 4.4. The mechanism is absolutely same, except that now instead of considering the first year students, we are considering second year students. So, their APA is calculated exactly in the same way. So, the academic performance index of the second year students is mean of second year students grade point average or mean percentage divided by 10. Same, absolutely same as we did for first year students, except that now here we are considering the second year students. Again, here the successful students are those who are allowed to proceed to third year, from second year to third year. Otherwise, the kind of data provided, the interpretation, the calculations are all absolutely same. So, this is 4.4 academic performance of the second year students of the program. So, this is the table interpreted in the same way. X is the mean grade point average or mean percentage divided by 10. Y is total number of successful students. Again, successful means those who are allowed to go to the third year. Z is total number of students who appeared in the examination, and APA is X multiplied by the ratio successful students by total students who appeared in the examination, Y by Z. The next subcriterion 4.5 is again absolutely similar to the earlier two criteria, except that now we are talking of academic performance of the third year students of the program. Again, 10 marks are allocated. The data is provided as in the earlier case, the mean grade point average or mean percentage divided by 10, that is X. Y is the total number of successful students. Z is the total number of students who appeared in the examination. APA is X multiplied by the ratio Y by Z. Absolutely same, except that now we are talking of third year students. And again, the successful students are those who are allowed to proceed to the fourth year. So, we have 3 APAs calculated for the 3 academic years, first year, second year, third year. So, subcriteria 4.3, 4.4 and 4.5. In all cases, the interpretation, the kind of data provided and the formula used, they are all absolutely similar. Then we come to another important measure of the performance of the students, which is placement, higher studies and entrepreneurship. This is subcriterion 4.6, and 30 marks are allocated for this, and we need to provide data regarding placement, higher studies and entrepreneurship, and this data must be backed up by adequate documentary evidence. We will presently look at what kind of evidence generally will be accepted by the visiting team, but we must have evidence to support our claims. So, average placement index is computed as the average placement index over the last 3 years, last year of graduation, the prior batch and the prior batch, that is 3 batches will be taken, okay. And in each case what is the average placement, and the average of this is taken as average placement index. The placement index itself is calculated as a percentage based on the number of students placed, the number of students admitted to higher studies, that is also accepted, and the number of students taking up entrepreneurship vis-a-vis the total number of final year students. So, this process is shown in this slide. You can see total number of final year students is the first number, Fs. Then we consider the students who are placed or who have taken up higher studies or who are taking up entrepreneurship. And their total means that essentially these students have found either placement or joined higher studies or have taken up entrepreneurship. So, add all these three, x plus y plus z, consider the ratio of this vis-a-vis the total number of final year students. So, x plus y plus z divided by Fs and treat this as a percentage, then that becomes the placement index. So, take this placement index for 3 graduating batches from LYG to the prior year to the prior year, LYG minus 1, LYG minus 2. Okay. Now, what kind of documentary evidence do we need to provide? If a student is placed, we must have some information regarding that placement. It could be the placement order issued by the company to the students. You could request them to provide a copy. If it is campus placement, then obviously the placement cell will have adequate records, so you must have copies of them. Or if the student got placed a little later or through off-campus measures, then we must request the student to provide us a copy of that placement information. Sometimes they may not respond. These are problems that the institute has to solve. But we must have evidence, documentary evidence. Without that, a mere claim that 10 students from this department got placed in so and so company would not be acceptable. So, we must have documentary evidence. Similarly, if the students got admitted to higher studies, then we must have a letter indicating that the students have actually joined the higher studies institute. That means a mere offer would not be accepted. The student must have been admitted to the higher studies. So, again, it may not always be that easy to get this information from the students, but if our alumni center is strong and has good links with the alumni, then it must be possible using the good offices of the alumni center to get this information from the students. Of course, if the students got all these things while they were still in the campus, then the placement and training center would certainly be having all this data. But the important point once again is we must have documentary evidence. Same with the students who are taking up the entrepreneurship. You must have some kind of a proof that the entrepreneurship has taken place actually, the company has been floated, or if it is a family business, the students have got into that entrepreneurship activity. So, some kind of an evidence to indicate, even if it is a family business, some kind of an evidence to indicate that these students have joined that business. So, students taking up the entrepreneurship, you must add up all these things, everything with the proper documentary evidence, then take the ratio of that against the total number of final year students, and considering that as a percentage, this becomes placement index. So, though we call it as placement, actually it is placement as well as higher studies as well as entrepreneurship, because effectively it means that they are fruitfully and gainfully into some activity. Now, if the total number of final year students is less than the sum of the sanction intake and the lateral entry including the leftover students, then what do we do? Do we take the actual value of Fs, or do we take the sanction intake plus the lateral entry? What I mean is, for example, the sanction intake is 120 and the lateral entry is 10% of it, let us say that is 12, so 132. So, sanction intake plus lateral entry becomes 132, but the number of students who have come to the final year and who are taking the examinations in the final year, Fs, is not 132 but less, let us say 100. Now, do we take the ratio of x plus y plus z to that 100, or do we take it with respect to 132? Now, the SAR criterion says that we must use the value of Fs as the sum of the sanctioned intake and the lateral entry including any leftover seats. So, in this case it will be 132 rather than 100. That is important point to admit. So, the data must be provided correctly and the department must calculate the value that it is going to get, that is marks that it is going to get correctly. Okay. So, the marks awarded would be the placement index points, what is called, is equal to 0.3 into average placement index. So, that is the value that one gets, that is the allocation of marks. Okay. So, that is how the marks are calculated. Then the last sub-criterion, which is 4.7, professional activities. This again includes the various activities that the students engage in to help them become better professionals. So, 4.7 professional activities has allocation of 25 marks and there are 4 sub-criteria. The total marks, the number and nature of sub-criteria, marks allocated to them are all the same for both Tier 1 and Tier 2 institutes. However, again I repeat, regarding Tier 2, please keep looking at the NBA website updates to see if there are any changes to the evaluation guidelines. The details are as shown below. We have 4 sub-criteria. One is professional societies or bodies, chapters, clubs and professional engineering events organized. There are 5 marks. Then students' participation in professional events, 10 marks. We will see the details of these sub-criteria presently. Then publication of journals, magazines, newsletters, etc. in the department, 5 marks. Then student publications, 5 marks. This is the criterion where there is a certain amount of subjective evaluation of the quality of these activities by the students. So, though we have the data, the quality of the data is assessed by the visiting team and that is a subjective perception slightly, but mostly it is objective, but there is an element of perception here. So, the first one 4.7.1, professional societies, bodies, chapters, professional chapters, clubs and professional engineering events organized. So, what are the guidelines? We must provide a list of active professional societies or bodies, chapters and clubs that exist at the departmental or cluster level in the past 3 years. Notice that the present SAR and accreditation policies permit a cluster level kind of treatment of these activities. So, a cluster of the departments are, in fact later we will see that under NEP 2020 even a group of institutes can become a cluster at the institute level. So, there is a notion of combining the resources of several departments or institute, and the NEP generally encourages this kind of collaboration between the institutes as well as departments. So, here provide a list of these active professional societies etc. And they provide this data for the past 3 years and that could be at the departmental or cluster level. And also provide a list of events organized by the professional societies or chapters or clubs over the past 3 years. So, it is simply a list. Name the professional societies or bodies or chapters or clubs. In fact, it is a good practice for the institute and departments to encourage the students to become members of the professional student chapters or clubs, and if they can provide some kind of administrative as well as financial assistance to establish local chapters, That would be a great thing to do. In fact, they must take it as a good practice. There are many professional societies who set up the student chapters in the institutes. It's very easy, the process, and it doesn't cost much. So the institute must encourage the departments to set up such chapters. For example, one could set up an ISTE chapter or IEEE students chapter. So there are several bodies available, and we must encourage the students to set up such bodies and become members. So we provide the list of these professional societies or bodies or chapters, and then what are the event organized, whether it is at the national level or international level. The event could be a workshop or a conference, or it could be a training session, whatever be. But it must be again backed up by documentary evidence. We must have the date of the event, how many students participated, how many were from outside the institute, some kind of photographic evidence or video evidence of the event taking place, and further details about who all were the resource persons, and some further information regarding what are the objectives of that event and what are the final outcomes. All these things are all good practices. Though the table only mentions name of the event and whether it is national or international level, our documentary evidence must include these kind of details. So provide all these things, and based on these the marks are awarded. Though there are only 5 marks, it carries a lot of weight on the way the visiting committee looks at the activities of the students in the department. That is, it has a bearing on the subjective perception regarding the activeness of the students. So the department must take care, and they must not feel that there are only 5 marks, so let us not worry too much. No, it's extremely important that this information is provided, and actually the events do take place. So the evaluation guidelines are availability and number of activities organized through professional societies or chapters or clubs. There are 2 marks for that, and number and quality of engineering events organized by the institute categorized by level, national or international. Here the quality of these engineering events is subjectively judged by the visiting team. That is why we must provide all the details regarding the event, the objectives of the event, the outcomes of the event, the resource persons. All this information is evaluated by the visiting team to arrive at the quality of the engineering event. So the number as well as the quality is important. There are 3 marks. For both the evidence is the documentary evidence. As I mentioned, it must include the date also, and if we can have some good photographs of the event or even some video clips of the event, that would be great. But to provide adequate documentary evidence. Then 4.7.2 is students' participation in professional events. Again 10 marks are allocated, and you must provide details of students who have participated at other institutes. This is important, at other institutes in various professional events. These events could be hackathons, codathons, ideathons, or ideation workshops, or it could be any other such kind of an event where the students participate and test out their ideas. So this is the way the information is provided. Okay. Who are all the students who actually participated in the events? Notice that the criterion asks for the actual name of the student, the affiliation and everything must be available, and what is the name of the event, and whether it was state level or national level or even international level events are possible. So what is the level at which the event was organized, state or national or international, the date on which the event took place, or if it is multiple dates, the dates on which the event took place, because sometimes the hackathons go for 2 days, and name of the award if any. If the students have won any award, name of the award. So these events can be wide variety. What is listed here is only just representative sample like hackathon, codathon and all that. The actual events could be many more. So there could be, for example, an event on sustainable initiatives that are possible regarding some particular resource like water. So what kind of ideas can be generated regarding that? So there can be a competition regarding that. So whatever be the event, we must have good documentary evidence, and these events here we are listing are those which have taken place at other institutes, not at the parent institute. For everything you must have documentary evidence. So number of students who participated in the state level events, then national level or international events, 3 marks each, and students who received any prizes or awards in such events, 4 marks. Participation itself is valuable, so there are marks for that. On the top of it, if they win some awards or prizes, that is still wonderful. So there are marks separately for that. And for all this, you must have documentary evidence. Then 4.7.3, publication of journals, magazines, newsletters, etc. in the department. So provide details of journals, magazines, newsletters, etc. published by the department. Okay, notice here we are talking of the departmental academic activities. So these are published by the department along with full details, names of the editors, issue numbers, volume numbers, and a list of students involved over the past 3 years. So this information is provided like this in the form of a table, a journal, magazine, or even a newsletter. In fact, it would be a good practice to have a newsletter brought out completely by the students. A student editorial board with a student as the main editor, chief editor, with of course the guidance from the faculty, but it could be an entirely initiative of the students, a newsletter they could bring out, or they could bring out a technical magazine, perhaps once in a semester or twice a semester. Bring it out every month would be too difficult perhaps, but bring out some kind of a student magazine which is technical magazine. Notice that there is an institute level magazine generally in almost all the institutes which is published once a year, an actual kind of event like a souvenir or something which is released once in an event, as once in a year, a college magazine. We are not talking of the college magazine, we are not talking of the institute magazine, that is a different affair. Here we are talking of the journal or magazine brought out at the department level, and preferably it should be a technical one. Of course, some kind of cultural activities also could be included in that magazine, but it would be wonderful if the entire thing is the initiative of the students. Otherwise, faculty also can participate. Then we must give information regarding the students who participated in those activities. So that is why name of the editor is asked, and students and which semester they belong to, those details are also asked for, and how many issues, and do you have a hard copy or a soft copy. In general, many departments would find it very difficult to publish enough number of hard copies for distribution. So typically they publish certain number of samples to be distributed selectively. The rest would be available as a soft copy, perhaps as a protected PDF, and that would be distributed electronically to all the students and all the other faculty, and in fact it would be distributed to the students of the allied departments also. So that is the general practice, but whatever is the practice that you are following, you have to provide evidence of that, and you must have samples available indicating the nature of the journal or magazine or newsletter published. So the evaluation guidelines is quality, first thing, then student involvement, second thing. As I mentioned, ideally if it is an entire initiative of the student, that would be great, with help and mentorship from the faculty. So quality and relevance of the content and print material e-format. So that is 3 marks. Then student involvement, journals or magazines or newsletter, 2 marks. For both, the document evidence must be there. For the second one, documentary evidence of student involvement must be available. Then finally, we have the 4.7.4, which is student publications. So there are 5 marks. If the students have been able to publish in journals or conferences, provide those details for the past 3 years. So name of the student and to which semester the student belongs, name of the publisher, if it is a conference, which specific conference or which specific journal, and what is the volume number, issue number, and if possible maintain a copy of that in the departmental files, but essentially you must give all these details. And if the paper has won any award, include the details of that. So name of the award if any, and provide these details for the past 3 years. This is extremely important. Once again, though there are only 5 marks, this criterion is an excellent indicator of the academic excellence of the students and the general ethos in the department. So take care to see that you have enough data that you can provide to indicate the activities of the students. Okay, that is how you must look at this. So the evaluation again is number of journal papers published, then conference papers published, and students who have won any award. Publishing itself is an extremely laudable activity, but if the students have received prizes or awards, it is still greater. So have evidence of all these things available. So document evidence must be available, and you must have references available to it, as well as the actual copies of the papers in the journals or conferences maintained in a file. So this must be available for inspection. So this is 5 marks. Okay. So that completes our discussion of the information related to the students' activities and the importance of that in terms of showing the academic ambience of the department. Okay. So that completes our discussion of that, and in the next unit we look at the SCR criterion 5 on faculty information. Criterion 4 was on students, now criterion 5 will be on faculty. So in the next unit we will understand the SCR criterion 5 on faculty information. Thank you. We will meet again in the next unit.